like to say that when the pilgrims are arriving, they are in a thin place. And by that I mean that they are somewhat stressed out. And I'm hoping that in modeling hospitality, in welcoming them with music, with flowers on the table, with opportunities to sing, with drinks and snacks, etc., that there's a transition that takes place. We're held in our own community, and we're basically the same. Walking with backpacks on our back, it kind of creates an equality among us. I would take my muñequito. This is the symbol of the hospitalero in service. Okay, it's the idea of a person with their arms outstretched in welcome, and inside there are more smaller people also giving a welcome. And so here's an opportunity to provide a person who's struggling to come to grips with one of life's hardest blows, and using the Camino to do it, to connect and hopefully get some resolution.
Hey, hello, pilgrims. Welcome again to the Way to Your Way podcast. Here is your host, Efrain Mendoza. And today we have with us Tom Friesen. He is like a veteran pilgrim and hospitalero. He has been teacher, and he has been done so much for the Camino de Santiago. And we are going to listen from him about his experiences and all that he has to say about the Camino de Santiago. So thank you, Tom. Welcome to the Way to Your Way podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm very happy to be here today with you.
Okay, thank you. And can you tell us when was the first time that you find out about the Camino de Santiago?
The year I retired, which was 20 years ago, I joined the local walking club, the hiking club, and somebody on one of our trips said there's this walk in Spain that I've always wanted to do. And when I asked for more information, he sent me some websites, and I decided that would be a good way to step off into retirement.
Okay.
So in February of 2005, I was walking my first Camino.
Okay, which Camino was that one?
I walked the Camino Frances. I went up to Pamplona and took a bus up to Roncesvalles, and I planned to go over the Pyrenees, but there was snow up to my waist around Roncesvalles, and the priest at Roncesvalles said, "You can't go on the Camino. You'll have to walk on the highway, and there's no point in going over to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port." This was before they prohibited people from crossing at that time of the year. But anyway, I was with two women from Majorca, and the three of us were the only ones in the entire albergue in Roncesvalles, the old albergue with a huge room, and only three of us there. And I've been watching the snow as we were going uphill on the Pyrenees, and I talked them into taking the bus back down to Zubiri, where the snow was like only a bit. It was there, but it wasn't going to be a problem. So we started walking from Zubiri along the Camino Frances.
Okay, and then I've been on Roncesvalles, but not walking the Camino, but I've been there. And I know that there is albergues, but there are also hotels in the area, and the albergues is super big. Do you know what's the capacity of that albergue?
Well, we were lucky. Mostly it was just the three of us, and there was always some option available. Only once when we got to Hontanas and we went into the albergue and the temperature on the wall registered 0 inside,
Wow.
did we phone up Turismo Rural and go over to take a different accommodation. Other than that, we always stayed in pilgrim shelters.
Okay. And then that first Camino that you walk, for how many days take you to arrive to Santiago?
I arrived in Santiago. We started on February 22nd. The woman I was walking with had to stop in Ponferrada because their 3 weeks of vacation was over. And I carried on, and I arrived in Santiago on March 21st. So it was basically 28 days of walking, and really it was a winter Camino, although as we got closer to Santiago, the weather warmed up. The first couple of weeks, it snowed every day,
Okay.
which was to my advantage because I could see the trail in the snow as a Canadian. and the women from Mallorca had no idea. So
Yeah.
they let me walk along with them. That plus the fact I was carrying toilet paper, which they hadn't thought to bring. So I was the third team member that they had not necessarily planned on bringing along. But we walked together to Ponferrada. A year and a day later, I met them in Ponferrada, and I walked into Santiago and then out to Finisterre with them. For me, my Camino was not really over until I finished it with Rosa and Guille. So,
Okay. That's nice. That's nice. And then being you from Canada, that cold on that time of the year over there in the Camino is you can compare that with Canada, or it was even colder than Canada?
well, um, there were actually more Canadians on the Camino back then than Americans. We had a website that had been a few years older, and actually, there's two websites. There's the Camino, the Canadian Company of Pilgrims. At the time, it was the Canadian Company of the little company of Pilgrims. It became the Canadian Company of Pilgrims, and the Quebec group had de Québec à Compostelle, and many French Canadians were walking the Camino and often coming in from France.
Okay, wow. Okay, and then after that Camino, uh, how many more Camino have you walked?
Well, I got walking pretty much yearly, and the one woman I walked with, Rosa, in 2010, with the declining economy in Spain, she got laid off from her job at the airport, and she was saying, "Oh, qué desastre." And I said, Rosa, if you're laid off, we can go walking the Camino. So in November, starting in 2010, we did a whole number of Caminos. So we walked parts of the Via de la Plata, parts of the Camino Catalan, the Camino Portugués, the Camino del Norte. We were on the Camino del Norte when COVID kind of hit. So that's changed our plans. But I've also walked down the Camino Inglés and out to Finisterre several times. And let's see, I've been on the Camino Catalan a couple of times, leaving from Montserrat,
Oh yeah, Montserrat is really nice.
and
Uh,
also the Santa Bres route coming down from Orense to Santiago. Was when I came back from the Camino the first time, I went to Toronto to a gathering of the Canadian Company of Pilgrims and the American Pilgrims on the Camino, like what we recently experienced in Vancouver. But this one happened in 2005 in May in Toronto at a
okay.
university college there. And I had signed up for the hospitalero training. So I actually got trained by a hospitalero I had met on the Camino. Um, the women I walked with did not often diverge. But one day, walking along, coming down from the Alto de Pardon, heading towards Puente de la Reina, we took a left and we found ourselves at Eunate. And we sat in the church there at Eunate listening to Gregorian chants. And then the
Okay.
women would never get a sello, a stamp in a bar. That was turistico. But they would go to the university or a museum or a church or an albergue. So they knocked on the door of the albergue at Ayunate, and this short Venezuelan woman answered the door and said, "Oh, I forgot to put the stamp up. Why don't you come in for some tea?" And she fed us chai tea. And later her husband said she must have liked you because she does not give her chai tea to everybody. But we walked in the door and we got to the entrance, and there was a poster on the wall, quite big, and it said, "A gathering of pilgrims, Toronto, Ontario, May, St. Michael's College, Toronto." And I said, "Well, I'm going to that. I've signed up for that." And she said, "I'm going too." And I said, "I'm
Wow.
going to take the hospitalero training." And she said, "Good, I will be your teacher." And this
Oh,
was
so
one of the
that
women.
wow! What a
This was
coincidence.
the Mary Luth Melis was one of the authors of the training program that took place in Spain, along with Don Jose Ignacio and Angela Herbina from Logroño. And Mary Luth and her husband came over and gave us a marvelous training. She played the guitar and she sang like an angel, and she did some other things like washing feet. But it was a wonderful training. And I went off the next year to work as a hospitalero. And I've been back almost yearly to work in different pilgrim shelters where they want to send me.
Oh,
So
that's
that's how it
nice.
got started.
And that hospitalero training, for how long it is? How many hours do you need to do the course or the training?
How many hours? I'm sorry. Do you do
Uh,
the course or
the training for
or
being a
the work?
hospitalero.
The work?
Sorry, the training for being a hospitalero. How many hours it is?
Well, they ask you to, in most cases, to work for half a month. And the system is quite clever because you work the first half of the month or the last half of the month, and you come in a day early to get yourself oriented to the procedures in the albergue and the resources that you have in the community. You work for 2 weeks, so la primera quincena, the first half of the month, or la última quincena, the last half of the month. And so I'll be showing up on either the 30th or the 31st of the month, and then I'll stay till the 15th, and then the next day my relief comes in, and the next day I get to walk out. Or I come in the 15th and I'm walking out the first of the month. So you're there and it's your house. You're not you're on staff. Anything that happens, you have to respond to. Um, Typically, when I'm on there, I try and go to bed at the same time as the pilgrims do. I might even try and grab a siesta in the afternoon to catch up on sleep because we'll be getting up before the pilgrims in the morning. I like to sing the pilgrims awake.
Okay.
So so when they're in their beds, they're going to hear "Morning has broken," or "Gracias a la vida," or "Tous les matins nous prenons le chemin," uh, and I wake them up that way
Okay.
and have great joy in it. We also get them singing after dinner in albergues where we get a chance to provide a dinner. Some of them are parochial, and the tradition of a community meal or a communal meal is a part of that um, offering in the places where the church is the host for the albergue.
Okay. And in those albergues that you has been as a hospitalero, uh, how many people as a part of a hospitalero or part of the staff are normally in an albergue?
The albergues vary in size. So if you have a large albergue like Ponferrada, you could have they got 200 beds there. Now, what's
Okay.
been happening recently is a change. Since the widespread use of these things on the Camino, people are
Okay.
getting used to booking their place to stay. And the places I work, which are the donativos, the voluntary donation that the pilgrims give, we do not accept reservations. We tell people just come, we will find a place for you. But many people, I think, want to have the assurance of a bed for that night. So
Okay.
the numbers of people staying in the donativos has actually fallen a little bit compared to some of the private albergues that will accept reservations.
Okay.
But
Okay.
to answer your question, you might have six hospitaleros working in Ponferrada. In the busy time, you might only have two. I've worked there a few times where it's only been two of us. The other albergues might have a couple of people. I've also worked solo a few times in smaller albergues.
Okay.
My
And when you say solo, that means that when you say solo, that means that there is no staff either.
Well, I'm the staff. It's my house,
Okay.
and I'm the staff. So I welcome the pilgrims, and uh, I worked up on Fonstavedon a couple of times, and the first time I was on my own, and a couple of times after one time, well after midnight, there was a knock on the door, and a tall Dutch woman said, "I was walking in the moonlight. My voices told me to stop here." And I said, "Are you alone apart from your voices?" And I had 18 pilgrims in all of the bunk beds that were inside, and so we were full there. There were some mats I could throw down in the chapel, but that was cooler. So what I just said was, "Take the upper bunk." And she slept in till 10 o'clock that next morning, I think. The next night, a big round Italian guy came, and he was my 19th pilgrim. So I said to him, "Take the lower bunk."
Okay, yeah, that's nice to know. That's an experience. And what has been the longest Camino that you have walked?
I'm sorry, say again. What was
Uh, the longest Camino that you have walked?
the longest Camino I've walked? Well, I would say the first time walking the Camino Frances, I walked for basically the 28 days to get to Santiago, and then 3 more days to get out to Finisterre. I walked other times shorter. When I'm walking with my friend Rosa, typically we would walk about a week, 8 days, and then she would go meet her boyfriend somewhere, and I would go to my posting. I would basically be walking before I worked. And occasionally I would walk into my pilgrim shelter assignment, or sometimes I would walk out of it. And I very much enjoyed that opportunity to be a pilgrim again, or to come in as a pilgrim, and then change my put on my panuelo
Okay.
and be the hospitalero in the albergue.
Wow,
This is
that's
this is
really
what we
nice.
give to our people who take our course in Canada. And basically, early on, the very first time I was working up in Fontsebedan, a pilgrim from Madrid gave me this memory of the Madrid Association from the Camino, and so over time, I've been building up my memories.
Oh, that's really, really
Those
nice.
mostly represent places I've worked as a hospitalero.
Okay, that's our very good memories that you have there.
Yep.
And then on all that experience and all those caminos that you have walked and being a hospitalero as well, and what would you say? Because I'm pretty sure that you have been listening to different pilgrims that have arrived to those albergues or people that have been walking with you. Anything that came to your mind that you say, wow, this is a story to tell to somebody else?
Well, I like to say that when the pilgrims are arriving, they are in a thin place. And by that I mean that they are somewhat stressed out. They're probably somewhat dehydrated. Most of them don't drink enough water. And one of the very first things I do is I say my name, and then I say, "Would you like a glass of water? Would you like some tea or some coffee?" Because I want to hydrate them. Hydrated people are a lot more reasonable, clear thinking, clear communicators than people who are dehydrated. So these wilted flowers who arrive at the albergue as pilgrims, if you give them some water, they perk right up and become themselves. And then you have an opportunity to interact with them. And it's, for me, the opportunity to meet these people and be of some assistance at a time when they're sometimes struggling a little bit or uncertain. One of the things we talk about in the training courses that we do is being a compassionate presence.
Okay.
So I try to make myself available. I'm not going to inflict myself on anybody, but if somebody wants to speak or has a question or has some concerns, I'm happy to res- respond to that. That's what I'm there for, and I'm hoping that in modeling hospitality, in welcoming them with music, with flowers on the table, with opportunities to sing, with drinks and snacks, etc., that there's a transition that takes place from walker, from marathoner, from adventurer, from excursionist, from tourist to pilgrim, and that to me is my joy and my delight. And I'm also very lucky because here in the time I took the training in 2005, the people who came mentioned that they weren't sure they'd be coming back. This was, I think, the third time they'd come to North America, and they weren't getting that many people coming back to actually work. So they were questioning that it's worth the expense to come all the way over here. So they stopped in 2006, and the Americans did a training in Williamsburg in March of 2007, and we did one in Victoria, British Columbia, in November of 2007. And since that time, we've probably held, I don't know, 50, 55 trainings, and sent last year we had 50 people that I know of serving on the Camino, and there's probably people who went and served and didn't bother to let us know. The way the system works right now is if they're new to doing it, they have to come in through me. They have to get an application form from me, and I will forward it on to Manuel, who is the coordinator of placements for Hosful, or I will connect
Okay.
them with somebody else who works for Feeks, or we have people working in France, in Portugal, and in Italy. I was just recently in Italy on my third posting there, having a very good time. Not a very busy time, by the way, but a very good time. The busiest I was painting a bench It was the new albergue. I'd seen it last year in June, and there was a lot of work to do. I was there in April and had a good time. And very, very friendly Italian village. People walking by would say, Buongiorno, arrivederci, ciao, ciao. So that was a lot of fun.
Okay, yeah, another thing that we haven't even talked about, but that's how we met. That we just met on the bridge of the Camino, hosted by American Pilgrims on the Camino, by the Canadian Company of Pilgrims. And for me, that was the first time that I've been in an event like that. For me, it was an amazing event. And I was telling someone that was with me on one of those days that you see how much positive energy is in this environment. And when we were singing, when we're all the things that we do during those 3-4 days. And what would you say that what is the magic on the Camino that made that all that happen around?
Yeah. I think because we are pilgrims who have left our jobs, our status, the size of our house, the kind of car we drive, the esteem that we're held in our own community, and we're basically the same, walking with backpacks on our back. It kind of creates an equality among us, and people are very, very quick to share their goals, their motivations, what the Camino is meaning to them. So you very quickly get some deep and profound conversations with people, and then of course we're walking together, sharing the weather, sharing the topography, and then we at the place where we stop, we get to look each other in the eye and raise a glass and say "Buen Camino, salud,"
Yeah.
and that brings us together. One of my friends, Arthur Paul Bors, wrote a book called The Way is Made by Walking, and I always say that's a really good book. And he talks about the Camino as what it's not his term, he gives credit elsewhere, but as a focal living experience. And that means what you're doing is totally focused and congruent with your personality, with your goals, with your abilities, and you're just doing something that just feels right. And he talks about 4 tests of a focal living experience, and he says you can answer yes to: there is no place I would rather be, there's nothing I'd rather be doing, there's no one I'd rather be with, this I will remember well. And I think that common experience and the fact that we get the endorphins from walking from 5, 6, 7 hours a day, we have the opportunity to sit around and cheer other people, or offer a glass of coffee, wine, beer to each other to express our solidarity. That all has great power in bringing us together, and therefore we're sort of all able to connect very, very well.
Yes. Something else that come to my mind that about that how people uh those stamps that are all around the caminos that that are in restaurants, churches, even individual people that have some stamp as well that they put it, and that sometimes it's like a kind of a competition. You have a very nice stamp, and then you follow, the next stamp is even better,
Yeah.
and everybody is so excited. Like we are like a kids collecting those stamps on the passport.
Yeah, the stamp is, we joke about hikers that hikers will hike for badges, and I think pilgrims will hike for sales, for stamps on their passport. And I've seen in people's homes the passport spread out, and maybe 2 of them, and then beside that the Compostela, and all framed up, and that's like um, a life accomplishment, or a bucket list thing to do. Some people, of course, have many. As you do more, I think going to the pilgrim office and getting a Compostela becomes less and less important. But
Yeah.
I know that that's often a motivation and a pride. When I'm a hospitalero in the albergue, I will take some time to admire the sayos of the pilgrims as they arrive, and say, "Oh yes, I stayed there." And what's it like there now? Because it changes, of course, with the change of the hospitaleros. But anyway, yeah, it's a connecting element of the Camino for sure.
Yes, here there is one of the
Ah, there
Compostela.
you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in some Spanish homes, Efrain, I've seen that very Compostela, but beside it, I've seen two credenciales spread out with
Okay.
all their different colors and designs, the sellos. And
Yeah.
one of the places I've worked is Granón, and Granón is one of the very first albergues. But the priest who started Granón, Jose Ignacio, did not believe in sellos. He told people to go to the bars. But I would take my muñequito. This is the symbol of the
Okay.
hospitalero in service. Okay,
Okay.
it's the idea of a person with their arms outstretched in welcome, and inside there are more smaller people also giving a welcome. I've taken that off my neck and traced it on somebody's credenzial, and it just fits in the little square. And then put the little figures inside the box, and then taken some yellow highlighter and colored that in. And the pilgrims seem very happy to get that. So that's my homemade sello that we give out in Gragnon.
Okay. Then the other thing, I understand that before you've been starting walking the Camino before your retirement, you were a teacher, right? Okay. And during your career, I believe that you may be having to deal with a lot of things through all your career, professional career. And what would you say? What kind of similarities maybe on your professional career with the Camino?
Yeah. Well, I was a teacher of deaf children,
Okay.
and deaf people are a wonderful community. But of course, they are a kind of a side subculture. And so,
Okay.
anytime that people can communicate with them, you connect with them closely. And so, being in that kind of service, being a hospitalero was very natural for me. It didn't feel at all new or different. And to me, the muñequito is kind of an identity symbol of, and I'm very fortunate because when people go off to Spain, they typically keep in touch with us, and I will send them a message ahead of time to try and connect them with people who have already worked in a place so that they're not coming in totally cold. And then after they're done, we'll ask them, did the training meet your needs? And I haven't heard no yet. But tell us about your posting, tell us about your experiences. One of the things we do during the training is we do a role play, and
Okay.
so we get people to act as the hospitalero. They'll put the panuelo on,
Okay.
and somebody will come up to them with a problem. It could be a pilgrim, it could be a community member, it could be their fellow partner, and then their idea is that they're supposed to try and get resolution for that. And we try and train them that not all problems are their problems, but we want them to do things like work on the same level as the person who comes to them. Stand up if the person's standing, offer them to sit down, offer them a drink. Um, have an open posture and a welcoming attitude, and make them feel like that you really care about them, that you are a compassionate presence, that you will respond to what they need. And when pilgrims have an issue, when there's a problem, and it could be something like they've got bed bugs, and they're worried about getting cleared of that, or they're sick of something, or they're concerned about the next stages they're going to, or they're walking with some element of grief. One of the stories I talk about is a fellow named Jean-Marc, and Jean-Marc was a Frenchman who came into Gragnon in May of 2012, and we explained to him that in Gragnon we would go to the downstairs to the chapel at 7 o'clock for a blessing or a mass and a pilgrim blessing, and then have dinner, and then go to the chapel for a vesper service if they wanted to. That was all optional. When we told him this, he said, "I want to sing Ave Maria at the
Okay.
mass." And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, let's ask the priest, Jesus, wonderful man. And Jesus came into the albergue, and I said to Jesus, Jean-Marc would like to sing Ave Maria in the Mass. And Jesus looked a little bit askance, and I said, well, Jean-Marc, show us. Jean-Marc was an opera singer and a teacher of voice. So the minute he opened
Oh,
his mouth, he got the job, right?
oh,
So
wow.
when at the end of the mass, Jesus would always call the pilgrims up to the front and deliver the blessing, the same one that's done in Roncesvalles and Bercianos and Granón and El Cuescar. There's a blessing that it goes be for them shelter in the storm, shade in the sun, um, firmness in their doubts, that kind of thing. But anyway, he brought people up, and then Jean-Marc sang. He sang Ave Maria, and then after dinner, we have a thing where we say to the pilgrims, pilgrims, there's a saying in English, sing for your supper. And we've all eaten together, so now we're going to sing. And I want you to join me. So I would sing Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. And because of Shrek, they all knew that. By 2005, they all knew Hallelujah. So I would sing several choruses because people would just join in with a Hallelujah. Anyway, after that, I would tap my chest and I would say, that's a song from my country, from Canada. Do you have a
Okay.
song from your country that you can contribute? And we would warn people coming in that this was a singing albergue. They didn't have to sing, but typically that would allow them time to get their cell phones out, find the words to songs, and sing. So every night was a different concert after dinner.
Yeah.
And Jean-Marc sang in that, and then he came to the uh, Vesper service in the choir loft of the church, and we pass around a lit candle. And when you're holding the candle, it's your turn to say a poem or a prayer or sing or hold it in silence. And again, he sang again. And then we finished the Vesper service, and we finished it what I call the Italian way. We all gave hugs heart to heart. And then he lingered. And so I said to him, Jean-Marc, if you'd like to sing some more, the pilgrims will hear you through the walls and through the alabaster windows, and it'll be a lovely way for them to go down to their rest. So again, he sang. So here's this wonderful concert I'm getting constantly. But
Wow.
as he finished and turned to leave, he said, when I was singing Ave Maria in the church today, that was for my daughter Marie. She
Oh,
died recently. And so here's an opportunity to provide a person who's struggling to come to grips with one of life's hardest blows and using the Camino to do it, to connect and hopefully get some resolution. So, I think of him a lot. I think about other pilgrims who have come in with at need, and by trying to just be present and just listening, you can sort of hopefully assuage that need, or give them some resolution.
yeah, that is important. And being on the Camino, walking, everybody have different why they are walking,
Yep.
and all of the reasons are valid. And it's so positive what you can find, and just a self encounter with yourself. And I remember that last year I was talking with a psychologist, and she was mentioning that I was mentioning, do you know about the Camino de Santiago? And she said yes, because my best friend went to the Camino de Santiago, and she was very struggling because he and she ends her relationship, and she needed a time alone. When she came back, she came like a very positive person that I couldn't believe it. And because she was very under stress, was really sad, but after she came
Yep.
back, came very positive person.
That's wonderful. I think it's as important to help people after they've come back as to prepare them to go. We talk about some of the practicalities, like how not to get blisters, and what kind of food you're going to have possibly eat, and the hours that the different places are open. Those are practical matters, but often people come back from the Camino and they're kind of confused because they've had this wonderfully utopian experience, like a focal living experience, and they have to go back and fit into their own life and pick up their role again as a worker or a husband or a father or whatever, and they can be confused. And so when we do our meetings, and we have a fall meeting and a spring meeting, we have two parts to the meeting. But very often we will do what we call unpacking your Camino, and we'll try and get people to understand why it's a exceptional experience.
Yeah, that's really important. Yes, to get again back to your normal days or to your routine.
Well, I think you're right. People come back changed. And my one of my questions for them often is, the Camino was a wonderful experience. How do you keep that joy, that living authentically alive in your life, um, in your normal life now? I mean, many of us go back to the Camino yearly, of course, to do
Right.
that. I go back more often, I think, because I'm working as a hospitalero, but it's an opportunity to do it again, do it over again. But there's also things you can do here and now that will give you some of the same emotional impact.
Yes, yes, that's absolutely right. And being working as a Camino, I have the fortunate to also as well to be working as in the Camino 100% because my work is just related to the Camino. I have in the podcast, I have a travel agency taking people there. I also been working with people that is in Spain, and everything is about the Camino. And it's like every little task that I'm doing through the day, I'm very happy
Good,
uh,
good.
because it's very difficult to have a job like that.
You're right. And very gratifying. I'm lucky as a retired person. I can direct my energy and my intentions to places that I care about and think are important. One of the things that I'm really proud of with the local chapter group that we have here in London is that there's a strong sense of community service. So not
Mm.
only do we have our meetings and a labyrinth walk and a St. James Day event, and some other experiences, but we also serve the community, the needy community, a dinner once every 2 months at a church that we're connected with. And some of us are with what they call compassionate presence, and they go and visit with people and just sit and listen to them and talk to them and give them an ear, to make them feel like they're human beings.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Well, Tom, we are approaching to the end of the conversation today, and we appreciate a lot what you have been saying to us today. But what would be a final advice to those future pilgrims that haven't decided yet to walk the Camino, that is on their bucket list, but they haven't said, well, we are going to go next year? What would you say?
There's many ways to walk the Camino. The fellow who told me about the Camino was working in London here as a volunteer, and so it took him about 10 years after he talked to me in 2004 for him to actually go. And by that time, he was in his 80s, and he went on a supported trip. And I was just happy to see that he got a chance to go. And so, I mean, there's different ways to do it, and there's different Camino experiences. Some people tell me now, I think my Camino days are done, but I could work at Pilgrim House, or I could work at the Pilgrim office, or I could work as a hospitalero, and those are ways to be connected with the Camino when your body is not allowing you to be physically as active as you were when you in your Pilgrim days.
Yes, that's a really good advice. Thank you very much for sharing all that information with us. And for you, pilgrims, thank you again for watching our episodes. And please keep adding your comments to the comment sections on the YouTube videos. That way we can have a new episodes where we are going to try to treat those topics that you mentioned there. And buen camino, everyone.
It's a great pleasure to talk to you, Efrain. Um, the joke I often try on people who are going off to the Camino is I say to them, if you plan to go on the Camino, for goodness sakes, speak to an experienced pilgrim. You'll probably learn nothing, but you're giving us free therapy. And they understand that when they get back and they want to talk about their Camino experience, and their family has about 5 minutes for them, and then that's it.